My mother-in-law grew up on a dairy farm. Some of you know what that is like. Others of us can imagine, but we don't really know. We don't know what it's like to be a young girl getting up before the sun, milking cows before school, then going to school, and coming back home to milk cows again. But whether or not we've actually done that ourselves, we all know that farming is hard work. And it never stops. It's not like being in school where you get a summer break. There's no summer or Christmas break when you're doing something like farming. Cows don't observe national holidays. They don't stop needing to eat and be milked just because it's July 4th. They don't care about our national pride or independence. They just need to survive. Taking care of them is a lot of work. But again, it's not for all of us. It wasn't the work for my mother-in-law forever either. She went to school and became an RN. She worked hard, kept learning, built a career for herself as a cardiac catheterization nurse. She worked just about in every hospital in town at some point. And again, we know that nurses work hard. Much like farmers, they don't get many breaks. Their work cannot go undone for a day. They can't just close a laptop, ignore emails, calls, and text for a week or even a day. Because patients need meds every few hours. They need to be changed and monitored, cared for. Nurses literally make it possible for the rest of us to heal, to recover, even to live. It's a lot of work, and it's hard work. We live in a culture where we pride ourselves on working hard. Strong work ethic is a value for most of us. Now, working hard can look lots of different ways. You know what it means to work hard. I'm sure you have worked hard to get where you are right now. My mother-in-law worked really hard for me to be where I am right now. See, she didn't stop putting in the work after growing up on a farm or building a career. While she was still working, she decided to tackle a huge project. She has some land, part of that old family farm, and she decided in 2009 to plant her first grapevines. She had a great first harvest, so she planted some more. Her vineyard now has 89 rows of grapevines like these two. The vines cover over 4.5 acres of land. There's 6 different varieties of grapes here now. In this vineyard's heyday, my mother-in-law hired seasonal workers to help her. On days just like this one, she'd be out here with a handful of young women from dawn through the heat of the day. Now, she's not cultivating the vines this year, so this is what untended Chardonnay vines look like. Tending them takes so much work by so many people. That's true of these vines, and it's true of all vines all the way back to Jesus' day. See, when Jesus taught, he often told stories to get his point across, and he used things, processes, and places that would have been ordinary for everyday people. This summer, we are looking at the stories or parables that Jesus told about the kingdom of God in our Tales of the Kingdom series. And back then, average people would have been familiar with growing grapes in a vineyard. They would have known about the hard work required, untangling vines, pruning them, guiding them in the direction that you want, protecting them from birds, disease, and weather the best that you can, and then harvesting one cluster of grapes at a time, vine after vine, bay after bay, row after row, field after field. The audience would have understood all of that when Jesus told this story. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and sent them into his vineyard. The terms are clear up front. The workers get paid 1 denarius for the day. And this landowner, like my mother-in-law, gets the workers started early in the morning. But then, about 9 in the morning, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, "You also go and work in my vineyard, and I'll pay you whatever is right." Well, by now the sun is up. They're really into the work, and the owner sees some other people who need work, so he offers them a job too. This time, the terms are unclear. He just says he'll pay them whatever is right, but it doesn't stipulate what that means. The workers seem grateful for the work. So they went. He went out again about noon and 3 in the afternoon and did the same thing. The owner makes multiple trips to the market to find the people who were looking for work, and he gives them a job for the day. Some of them started early, others have joined the effort at 9, noon, and 3. Then, about 5 in the afternoon, he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing?" "Because no one has hired us," they answered. He said to them, "You also go and work in my vineyard." The owner offers a 5th group of workers the chance to make a little money that day. He just keeps adding to it. He really wants to get that work done. There must be lots of it. Maybe it's pruning season or something. Now, you may have noticed he does ask these guys why they're still available to work at 5 in the afternoon. Some of us would call that evening, wouldn't we? And we'd be wondering the same thing. It's like when I drive to meet with someone during the day and I see lots of people out and about. I can't help but think, why are all these people free to run errands in the middle of the day? It's time to work. Of course, I know different people work different schedules and shifts, and for some people, being out running errands is part of their work for their family or business. I know my response isn't really rational or fair or flattering. It's my honest reaction, but I'm not proud of it. I don't think I'm alone either, though. This vineyard owner asked them why they're standing around. The answer that it's not because they don't want to work, or they answer that way, or it's not that they've been turning down opportunities, they just haven't had any. No one's hired them, so he does. When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first." The workers who were hired about 5 in the afternoon came, and each received a denarius. These guys get paid by the day, every day. And the foreman starts by paying the guys who were hired at 5 p.m. How much did they get? A denarius. Does that surprise anybody? Do you remember what it said back at the beginning? That's what the owner told the first people he hired, the ones who started working at dawn, that they were going to earn for the day. That's interesting. Let's see what happens. So when those came who were hired first, they expected to receive more. But each one of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. "These who were hired last worked only 1 hour," they said, "and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day." Well, we saw that coming, didn't we? Can you blame them? They'd been working all day long, and the guys who worked for 1 hour got paid the same. I'd be grumbling too, and I bet some of you would be right there with me. The story continues. But he answered one of them, "I am not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius?" He's not wrong. They did agree to work for 1 denarius. Those were the clear terms. He's doing exactly what he said he would, and he says it's not unfair. I don't think the workers felt that way, but the owner says, "Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I'm generous?" Those last sentences are loaded. We'll come back to them. But basically, he says he wants to pay everyone the same. And it's his money, so he can do what he wants with it. Then he asks them an honest question. He hones in on the issue in their hearts and asks if they're jealous because he's generous. That's how the story ends, and then Jesus tags on a concluding statement. It's not to be missed. He says, "So the last will be first, and the first will be last." So, that first word indicates that this sentence sums up the whole story. This is the point of this parable. Every parable has a point. This is it for the parable of the vineyard workers. The last will be first, and the first will be last, says Jesus, which is the total opposite of how things work in our world. And that's the point. Things in the kingdom don't work like things in the world. Kingdom values are not culture's values. In fact, kingdom values are the opposite of cultural values. That's exactly what Jesus says here and what this story shows. It also fits with our conversation last week about the parable of the pearl and the hidden treasure. I talked about how one of the things we learn from those parables is that living in the kingdom requires a reversal of our values. This is a prime example of that reversal. In our world, in our culture, in our hearts, we think the first should be first and the last should be last. The ones who work first, hardest, and longest should be the first ones paid and the ones paid the most. Those who are the last to step onto the job site and do the least work should get paid last and least. That's what we would expect in any job we accepted. Having worked a few days in this vineyard myself, feet soaked through with morning dew, hands swollen and bruised by the end of the day, being quite literally tangled up in vines taller than I am. After doing that for a whole day, from dawn to 6 p.m., you'd better believe I would want to be paid better than the guy who showed up at 5. That's exactly what I would want. But it's not what the owner does. It's not what Jesus wants. It's not what Jesus does. Now, before somebody gets all bent out of shape, let's talk about an ethic of hard work. That's a value in my life and in many of yours. It's a value in our culture. It's also a kingdom value. Jesus is not dismissing it. Remember, the owner asked the men who are standing around at 5 why they aren't working. He's checking to see if they're lazy. Jesus isn't interested in that. That's consistent with the broader message of the Bible. In the book of Proverbs, which we spent some time in recently, there are many sayings about the importance of hard work. There are over a dozen proverbs about how bad it is to be lazy or a sluggard. The most well-known one is probably Proverbs 6:6. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. There's Proverbs 21:25. The craving of a sluggard will be the death of him because his hands refuse to work. Being lazy will be the death of you. The Bible says that. Hard work is a kingdom value. Just might not be the most important thing in the kingdom like it is for some of us. We like a good work ethic. And we like fairness. That's also a value for us, even though we all know that life is not fair. We know that it's not. That doesn't keep us from wishing that it were. And though we all want things to be fair, this is a really big issue for some of us. Have you ever taken the Myers-Briggs personality assessment? You're basically assessed in 4 categories, and one is whether you operate from judgment, labeled J, or perception, labeled P. Over half of people come out as Js. Now there's 16 different options for your full results. Some are more common than others. In fact, the top 4 personality combinations in the U.S. make up for not a quarter, but about half of all people. And many of those combinations are Js. We're a judgmental lot. That's not exactly what it means. It means that many of us highly value fairness. We have clear ideas around right and wrong. Ps, on the other hand, favor perception. They want to be aware of all the variables, the people, the ideas, the things, and events. They're less concerned about what's right and fair and more concerned about seeing the big picture and all of its components. Both have value. One isn't right, the other wrong. We're all really a combination of both. It's really a continuum between J and P. Yet most of us are more on the J side than Ps in this country, and it makes sense in our culture. And I say us because it includes me. I'm a J, so I get wanting things to be fair. I also know that God's doing some redeeming work on my tendency towards judgment. See, we have to hold our natural tendencies up against the truth of Jesus, His kingdom, and His ways. And Jesus says, the last will be first, and the first will be last. And that's not fair. We have to grapple with that. Because our personalities are not the most important things. They're not the source of truth. They shouldn't be the authorities for our lives. If we claim to follow Jesus, and not everyone here does, so some of you are off the hook, but for those of us who call Jesus the Lord of our lives, then He is the authority on who we are and who we should be. He determines what our lives and world should look like. And in his kingdom, fairness is not the ultimate value. He turns fairness square on its head when he says the last will be first and the first will be last. That's the truth of the kingdom. And in the kingdom, God is sovereign. He gets to dictate the ways of the kingdom because he's the Lord of it. Just like the owner of the vineyard said to the grumbling workers, "Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money?" God gets to do what he wants with his kingdom and with his grace. See, that's what this parable is really about. It's not about money. Money's the object of the story because this is a parable. And in parables, Jesus uses the stuff of ordinary life to explain extraordinary truths. Everybody relates to the idea of money, particularly the kind you earn for a hard day's work. But Jesus isn't really talking about money here. And I'm not talking about money because it's important to me either. None of that is the point. Earning wages is the subject of this parable simply because it's something we all understand. It's not really about money. God doesn't dole out money to us based on how hard we work. This parable, like all of them, is making a comparison. This story compares the vineyard owner's distribution of wages to God's distribution of grace. That's what this is really about. Let's see what that meant for Jesus' original audience and what it means for you and me today. Now, the first section of the Bible tells the story primarily of how God interacted with one segment of the human race, the Israelites. We know God interacted with people outside of that race. There are examples of God communicating with non-Israelites in the Old Testament part of the Bible. And like we just said, God is sovereign. He gets to communicate with whoever he wants, wherever and whenever he wants. So who knows who else God communicated with, when, where, and how he chose. All we know is what we have in the Bible. And that tells the story of how he was the God of the Israelites for a long time. They were the originals. And in the words of our parable today, they were the first crew of workers, the ones who began work at dawn. God promised them he would be their God and they would be his people. God kept that promise. And when Jesus came to earth, he was born into an Israelite family. He was raised in that environment. When he began his ministry, he did that within Judaism at first. But then he opened it beyond them. Jesus started talking about and demonstrating that his teachings, healings, his love and grace, that a relationship with him, it was available to non-Jews as well. In the first century, they were known as Gentiles. In the words of our parable today, they were the workers who arrived later in the day. And Jesus said that he would be their God, and they would be his children, and Jesus was true to those promises. But that felt as unfair to the Jews then as to the workers who began at the crack of dawn and worked through the heat of the day. They'd been in relationship with God for generations. They'd been through all the ups and downs, and now a relationship with God was being offered to other people who were looking for it, who wanted it, but who felt like God had never been for them before. The vineyard owner hit the nail on the head when he asked the grumbling workers, "Are you envious because I am generous?" They were envious of his generosity, and the Israelites were jealous of Jesus' generosity to Gentiles. Sounds silly to many of us. Let's take this idea and see how it might be relevant today. We are Gentiles, or assume we are, so we appreciate that Jesus is generous and extends his grace to us. But are there situations or circumstances in which we might get a little envious of his generosity with others? Are there some people that we don't think deserve his grace who aren't good enough? Who don't look or sound or act like people who get God's grace? That's how the vineyard workers felt about the ones who joined late in the day. It's how the Israelites felt about the Gentiles. Is that how Christians today feel about people who give their lives to Jesus on their deathbeds? I mean, here we are doing our best to live for Jesus and his kingdom values that are the opposite of how we would naturally live for years, for decades, and they do it for mere minutes? Is that how Christians feel about people who find Jesus in prison? Joining us for church right now are people who are part of our prison locations. Maybe some of them gave their lives to Jesus after they were incarcerated. Are they any less deserving of God's grace than you and me? Do Christians today ever make new people feel less welcome in church, less worthy to be there, less deserving of a spot, particularly their spot, in worship, in serving, in leadership? We're kidding ourselves if we think that none of that exists in the church today, that we're above that, because we're humans, just like the Israelites of Jesus' day and the vineyard workers of his story. Are we capable of such attitudes? Sure we are. We're capable of misbehaving and having bad attitudes, being jealous. We are all capable of acting like human beings with worldly values. But we are called to something better, something higher, something truer. We are called to live in the kingdom, and in the kingdom, when we feel, see, or hear such behavior, we must stop it. There is no room for that. In the kingdom, God's grace is available to the person who's been in church since 9 months before they were born, and the same measure of grace is available to the person who comes back to God after running away and doing their own thing for a while. And the same grace is available to the person who accepts Jesus' grace after a moral, legal, or relational failure. It's available to the person who's never set foot in church, to the one who lives behind bars, and to the one who's lying on their deathbed. They all get the same grace. It is God's grace to dispense with as he wishes, and what he desires is that everyone who wants it gets it. Period. No matter what. No matter how late they are to the party in the kingdom, it's not about any of us getting what we deserve. And thank goodness for that. None of us deserve God's grace. But truly accepting it and understanding it means you truly and sincerely, with no judgment or jealousy, want that grace for everyone else, just like Jesus does. That's what we're about here at PCC, because that's what the kingdom of God is about. We want you here. We want you to experience God's grace and live in it and extend it to everyone possible. But let's be clear, there's no room for being a grumbling worker here. If you want to complain about who is welcome here, who finds grace here, who gives their lives to Jesus here, who God works through here, then this is not the right place for you. However, if you want to receive the grace Jesus generously offers, then this is the place for you, and it's never too late. You aren't behind. We're not jealous that you're here. We're overjoyed. We want to help you experience the grace of Jesus. That's why we're here. It's why we exist. And if you want to go find other people who are looking for that grace and bring them back next week, next month, next year, in the next decade, then this is the place for you. You have a role to play in inviting others to come to Jesus and to receive his grace. Remember, in the parable, the owner went back to the marketplace 5 times to keep getting more people. He wasn't satisfied with the people he got early on. He wanted everyone who was interested. And that's true here. There's a lot of work to do. There are so many people to reach. We feel urgency and responsibility to help them get to know Jesus, because that's what he's called us to do. So come with us as we try to live out the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven.
In the kingdom of heaven, none of us get what we deserve. Thank goodness for that. Pastor Angie just taught us that there is grace for all of us, whether we've been doing this for a long time or maybe we're starting today. And there's a lot of work to still be done to bring God's kingdom on earth just as it is in heaven. We hope you'll join us in that work by coming to events, by signing up for a small group, by joining a summer group, by volunteering right here online. We need chat hosts. We want people to come and help us welcome those who haven't been here before, more workers for this harvest. So reach out to me, reach out to any of the hosts in the chat right now. If you're interested in any of that, we would love to connect you. We're really thankful for you, and we can't wait to see you next week as we hear another tale of the kingdom.